She came through the ballroom doors alone, no adult with her, no one holding her hand, just a 5-year-old girl in a white dress that had been pressed carefully that morning, running across the marble floor of the Grand Hyatt Ballroom on the 43rd floor above San Francisco Bay, her small shoes making sounds that cut through the string quartet, and the murmur of 400 guests like something that could not be ignored. She was looking for one person. She found him at the altar. She ran straight to him, past the seated guests, past the flower arrangements, past the bridesmaids who reached for her and missed, and she grabbed the sleeve of his wedding suit with both fists and she pulled. He looked down, and what he saw on her face stopped him completely. Not the tears, not the running, not the fists in his sleeve. Her eyes. The specific expression of a child who has seen something she cannot carry alone and has run, with everything she had, to the one person she believed could fix it. "She hurt my mommy!" she sobbed. She pushed her. Mommy fell, and she's on the floor and nobody is helping her. The string quartet stopped. 400 people turned. The woman at the altar, the woman in the white dress, the woman with the bouquet, the woman who was supposed to become his wife in approximately 4 minutes, went very still. And Caleb Foster, 39 years old, founder of one of the most successful climate technology companies in Silicon Valley, a man who had spent his entire professional life making fast decisions with incomplete information and being right often enough that people had stopped questioning his instincts, made a decision in under 3 seconds. He handed his boutonniere to the best man. He crouched down. He looked at the little girl's face. "Show me," he said, and he took her hand, and they walked back through the ballroom together, the billionaire and the 5-year-old, while 400 wedding guests watched in complete silence, and the woman at the altar stood alone with her bouquet, and understood, in the specific clarity of that moment, that something had shifted in a way she could not reverse. Hey, welcome back, everyone. I am so glad you are here. This is the place for stories that reach inside you and rearrange something. Stories about the moments when a child's voice cuts through everything complicated and leaves only what is true. Before we begin, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country in the comments. I read every single one. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do it right now, because today's story is one that will stay with you long after it ends. Stay until the very end. Let's go. San Francisco does not apologize for its contradictions. It is a city of extraordinary wealth and extraordinary need, existing side by side with a proximity that most cities would find uncomfortable, and that San Francisco has decided, somewhere along the way, is simply the texture of what it is. The hills and the bay and the fog and the specific light that falls on the water in the late afternoon. None of it apologizes either. It is what it is. You either understand it or you don't. Her name was Nadia. Nadia Osei, 33 years old, born in Oakland to Ghanaian parents who had come to the Bay Area in the early 90s and built a life there with the particular combination of education and stubborn optimism that had sustained them through every version of the Bay Area's changing economics. Her father taught mathematics at Oakland High. Her mother had worked in hospital administration for 20 years. Nadia had grown up watching her parents build a dignified life from honest work and had inherited from them both the dignity and the understanding that it required constant maintenance. She had a degree in hospitality management from San Francisco State. She had worked in hotel catering and event services for 8 years. She was exceptional at it, precise, professional, with the specific gift of someone who understood that a great event was invisible in its execution. The guests at a perfectly run event never thought about the staff. They thought about the flowers and the food and the music and the people they were with. That invisibility was the highest form of the craft, and Nadia practiced it with the seriousness of a master. She had been contracted to work the Foster-Whitman wedding for 6 weeks. It was the biggest event of her calendar year. The Foster-Whitman wedding was not simply a wedding. It was the wedding that San Francisco's tech and venture capital community had been discussing since the engagement was announced 14 months ago. Not because of the couple, though the couple was significant enough, but because of the venue and the scale and the specific combination of old Bay Area money and new Silicon Valley power that the guest list represented. 400 people. The Grand Hyatt on Union Square, full buyout, 43rd floor ballroom with views of the bay in every direction. A budget that Nadia's catering manager had described simply as not a concern. Nadia had assembled her team. She had planned every detail with the precision of someone who understood that at this level, details were everything. She had walked the venue 6 times. She had tasted every dish. She had mapped every service corridor, every entrance, every exit, every moment of the 3-hour ceremony and 5-hour reception down to the minute. She had brought Zara. This was the decision she would spend the following weeks understanding. Not regretting, she had stopped allowing herself that particular luxury when Zara was 2 years old and her father had made his exit, and the arithmetic of single motherhood in San Francisco had become the central mathematical fact of her existence. Regretting decisions was for people who had alternatives they had not taken. Nadia had taken every available alternative, and this had been the one that remained. Zara was 5 years old. She had Nadia's precision and her grandfather's stubbornness, and the specific quality of children who have been raised by someone who pays very close attention to everything. She paid very close attention to everything. She had been told, in the serious voice, that today was a very important day and that she was going to stay in the staff break room on the 42nd floor with a tablet and the lunch Nadia had packed, and she was not going to come to the 43rd floor for any reason except an emergency. "What is an emergency?" Zara had asked. "Something that cannot wait," Nadia had said. "How will I know?" "You will know," Nadia had said. Zara had accepted this definition with the focused seriousness she brought to all important information. The wedding was supposed to start at 2 p.m. At 1:47 p.m., in a service corridor on the 42nd floor, something happened that Zara decided, with complete certainty, qualified as an emergency. Caleb Foster was not a typical San Francisco billionaire. He had not dropped out of Stanford. He had not raised his first round in a Palo Alto coffee shop. He had not built something fast and sold it fast and done it again. He had built one thing, slowly and deliberately, over 14 years, because he had believed from the beginning that the problem he was solving, affordable utility-scale battery storage for renewable energy, was important enough to deserve that kind of patience. He had been right. Foster Energy Solutions was now valued at something that required a conversation about billions rather than millions, with projects across 6 states and a team of 400 engineers and scientists who had come to work for him specifically because he was the kind of CEO who understood that the best work happened when people were treated like the experts they were. He was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of physicality that came not from a gym, but from the years he had spent on construction sites and in warehouses and on wind farms before the company had grown large enough to require him to stay behind a desk. He had his mother's directness and his father's patience and the specific quality of people who have built something real from nothing, a complete absence of pretension about what things cost and what they required. He had met Vanessa Whitman at a climate policy conference in Washington 18 months ago. Vanessa was 37, old San Francisco money. Her family had been in the Bay Area since the gold rush, their wealth surviving and multiplying across every version of the city's economic transformation. She was accomplished, articulate, genuinely committed to the environmental causes that intersected with Caleb's work. She moved through the world with the ease of someone who had never once been made to feel she did not belong somewhere. Caleb had believed, for 18 months, that the ease was warmth. He would understand the distinction on his wedding day. The service corridor on the 42nd floor connected the staff break room to the freight elevator that serviced the ballroom above. It was narrow and fluorescent lit, and smelled of catering trays and the specific backstage smell of a large event in full preparation. Nothing glamorous about it, nothing staged, the part of the building that existed to make the part above it possible. Nadia had been in the corridor at 1:45 p.m. She was moving quickly, a last check of the catering staging before she took her position for the ceremony. She had her radio in one hand and her event timeline in the other, and she was moving with the focused efficiency of someone who has 13 minutes before the most important event of her professional calendar begins. Vanessa had come through the service door at 1:46. Nadia had not expected her there. Nobody expected the bride in the service corridor 13 minutes before her own ceremony. But Vanessa moved through spaces with the complete authority of someone who considered all spaces available to her, and she had come through the service door because she had been looking for the event manager and had been directed, incorrectly, to the 42nd floor corridor. She had found Nadia instead. What happened in the following 90 seconds was something that Nadia would replay many times in the weeks that followed, trying to understand it, trying to find the logic in it, finding none. Vanessa had stopped when she saw her. She had looked at Nadia the way she looked at all event staff, the practiced blankness of someone for whom certain categories of people existed below the threshold of full attention. "Where is the event manager?" she had said. 43rd floor, Nadia had said. "I can radio her for you." "I don't need you to radio her," Vanessa had said. "I need you to move. You are standing in front of the freight elevator." Nadia had stepped to the side. Vanessa had moved toward the elevator, and then she had stopped. She had turned around, and she had looked at Nadia with an expression that Nadia had not seen coming and would not forget. "You're the one who changed the centerpiece arrangement on table 12, Vanessa had said. "I specifically said eucalyptus only. There are roses on table 12. The eucalyptus order was short by 3 arrangements," Nadia had said. "The florist substituted ivory roses to match. I approved it this morning because—" "I don't care why," Vanessa had said. "I said eucalyptus. You changed it without telling me. On my wedding day, I tried to reach you at 8 a.m. Do not talk back to me." The corridor had gone very quiet. "I am explaining what happened," Nadia had said, her voice completely level. The armor that 8 years of professional invisibility had built, intact. "You are a catering coordinator," Vanessa had said. "You do not explain things to me. You do what you are told, and when you cannot do what you are told, you tell me immediately, and you do not make unilateral decisions about my wedding." "I understand," Nadia had said. "I apologize for the miscommunication." She had begun to move past Vanessa toward the corridor exit. Vanessa had stepped in front of her. "I am not finished," she had said. "Ms. Whitman," Nadia had said, "I need to return to my station. The ceremony begins in 12 minutes. When I am finished, I need to go." And Vanessa Whitman, bride, old San Francisco money, a woman who had never once in 37 years been told by a service worker that a conversation was over, had put both hands on Nadia's shoulders and shoved, not hard enough to injure, hard enough to send Nadia backward into the corridor wall, her radio clattering to the floor, her timeline scattering across the linoleum, her body hitting the wall with a sound that was not loud but was completely real. Nadia had slid down the wall. She had landed on the floor. She had sat there for a moment, stunned, not from pain, from the specific shock of physical contact from a direction she had not expected, in a space where she had not expected it, from a person who had simply decided, in a moment of frustration, that her hands were a valid tool for managing a service worker. She had not cried. She was Nadia Osei. She did not cry in corridors, but she had sat on the floor for a moment longer than she had intended, because her body needed that moment to understand what had just happened to it. And in that moment, the break room door at the end of the corridor had opened, and Zara had come through it. She had heard the sound. Through the break room door, through the tablet she had been watching, through the noise canceling of being 5 years old and absorbed in a show, she had heard the sound of her mother hitting the wall. She did not know it was that sound, but something in her, the specific antenna of a child who has spent 5 years paying very close attention to everything, had known that the sound was wrong. She had opened the break room door. She had seen the corridor. She had seen her mother on the floor. She had seen the woman in the white dress standing above her. She had taken all of it in, with the focused speed of a child processing an emergency. And then Vanessa had walked past Nadia on the floor without another word, and gone to the freight elevator, and pressed the button, and the doors had opened, and she had stepped in, and the doors had closed. And Zara had run to her mother. "Mama, I'm fine," Nadia had said immediately. Automatic. The reflex of a mother who does not want her child to be afraid. "I'm fine, baby. I slipped." But Zara had looked at the wall. She had looked at the scattered timeline papers on the floor. She had looked at her mother's face. And Zara, who paid very close attention to everything, had known that her mother had not slipped. "Who did this?" she had asked. "Nobody," Nadia had said. "I slipped. Help me pick up the papers." They had picked up the papers. Nadia had stood up. She had straightened her uniform. She had picked up her radio. She had looked at her daughter and said, in the serious voice, "Go back to the break room. Stay there. I will come get you after the ceremony." Zara had looked at her mother for a long moment. "Okay," she had said. She had gone back through the break room door. Nadia had gone to the freight elevator. And Zara had stood inside the break room for approximately 45 seconds. Then she had opened the break room door again. She had gone to the stairwell. She had climbed one flight of stairs. She had pushed open the door to the 43rd floor. She had found the ballroom. Hit that like button right now, because a 5-year-old girl just climbed a flight of stairs alone to do the thing that every adult in that building had decided was not their job. Subscribe right now because this story is about to change direction in a way you will not see coming. Let's keep going. The ballroom doors were the tall kind. Heavy, gold-handled, the kind that required 2 hands for a child to open. Zara had used both hands. She had pulled with everything she had. The door had opened. She had come through it. And she had run, past the seated guests who reached for her, past the bridesmaids who tried to intercept her, straight down the center aisle to the altar where the man in the wedding suit was standing. She had grabbed his sleeve. He had looked down. "She hurt my mommy," Zara had sobbed. She pushed her. "Mommy fell and she's on the floor and nobody is helping her." And Caleb Foster had looked at this 5-year-old girl's face, really looked at it, the way he looked at everything that mattered, with the full attention of someone who had learned across 39 years that the most important information usually arrived in the form you least expected. And he had made his decision. "Show me," he had said. He had taken her hand. They had walked back through the ballroom. Behind them, at the altar, Vanessa Whitman stood alone. They found Nadia at the freight elevator bank on the 42nd floor, waiting for the elevator to return. Her uniform straightened, her timeline back in her hand, her face composed in the armor that 8 years had built. She looked up when the stairwell door opened. She saw Zara. She saw Caleb. She saw the wedding suit. Something moved across her face that she could not entirely control. Not gratitude, not relief. Something more complicated than either. The expression of a woman who had spent 8 years managing situations without help, and has just been found by help in a place she did not expect it. "Mr. Foster," she said, her voice completely professional. "I apologize for the disruption. Zara should not have—" "What happened?" he said. "It was nothing. A misunderstanding. I need to return to—" "Nadia," He said her name with the directness of a man who has no time for the performance of everything being fine. What happened in this corridor? Nadia looked at Zara. Zara looked back at her with the specific expression of a child who has done what needed doing and is not apologizing for it. Ms. Whitman and I had a disagreement, Nadia said carefully. It became physical. I am not injured. I would like to return to my station. Physical, Caleb said. I am not injured, Nadia said again. Caleb looked at the corridor wall. He looked at the floor. He looked at Nadia. He looked at Zara, who was still holding his hand and looking up at him with those enormous focused eyes. He took a long breath. Stay here, he said to Nadia. Both of you. He went to the stairwell. He went up the one flight. He went back through the ballroom doors. 400 people watched him walk back to the altar. He stood in front of Vanessa. He looked at her for a long moment. Vanessa looked back at him with the composed precision of a woman who has made a calculation and is waiting to see if it holds. It did not hold. Did you put your hands on my event coordinator? He said, quietly. The quiet that does not need volume. Something shifted behind Vanessa's eyes. She changed the centerpieces without authorization, Vanessa said. I was upset. I may have… Yes or no. A pause. Yes, she said. But, there is no but, he said. The ballroom was completely silent. 400 people, not one of them breathing loudly. Caleb, Vanessa said, her composure, which was considerable, beginning to show its limits. There are 400 people in this room. We have been together for 18 months. You are going to end this over a woman, he said, who was doing her job, in a corridor, who was pushed into a wall. He paused, and her daughter who climbed a flight of stairs alone to find someone who would help her mother because the adults around her had decided it was not their concern. Vanessa looked at him. The composure was gone now. What was underneath it was not what he had expected, not fury, not calculation, something more honest than either, something that looked, in this specific light, like a person who has finally arrived at the version of themselves they have been trying to avoid. I am not a good person, she said, quietly, not performing it, just saying it. No, he said, not in that corridor. I don't know how to… She stopped. I have never been told no, by anyone. It makes me… I know, he said. A pause between them. I am sorry, she said. And it was real, genuinely real, the specific realness of something said without audience management. I know, he said again. He looked at her for a long moment. I can't do this, he said. She nodded. Once. The nod of a woman who has known something for a while and has been waiting for the person across from her to catch up. She picked up her bouquet. She walked off the altar platform. She walked out the side door. It closed behind her. Share this story right now with one person. One tap, because what just happened at that altar was not a dramatic confrontation. It was two people telling each other the truth in front of 400 witnesses and then letting it be what it was. Send this to someone who needs to see it today. Subscribe, because the rest of this story is where everything changes. Let's finish it. Caleb went back down the stairs. Nadia and Zara were where he had left them. Nadia standing straight, uniform pressed, face composed. Zara beside her, holding her mother's hand with both of hers, looking at the stairwell door with the focused attention of someone waiting for a report. Caleb came through the door. Zara looked at him. Is Mommy okay now? She asked. Mommy was always okay, he said. She is very strong. I know, Zara said. But is the other thing fixed? He looked at her. Yes, he said. The other thing is fixed. Zara considered this. She looked at her mother. Nadia was looking at Caleb. The corridor was fluorescent lit and narrow, and it smelled of catering trays and nothing at all glamorous, and it was, Caleb thought, the most honest space in the building. I owe you an apology, he said to Nadia. You don't, she said. Automatic. The reflex. I do, he said. What happened to you in this corridor happened because of a relationship I should have examined more carefully a long time ago. I saw things I explained away. I ignored information my instincts were giving me because I had decided that the momentum of where I was going was more important than what I was seeing. He paused. That is on me. Nadia looked at him. Mr. Foster, Caleb, you just stopped your own wedding, she said. Yes, for a centerpiece disagreement. For a woman pushed into a wall, he said. And for a 5-year-old who climbed a flight of stairs alone because the adults around her had decided it was not their problem. Nadia looked at Zara. Zara was looking at Caleb with her full assessing gaze, the gaze of a child taking the measure of a person. You believed her, Nadia said quietly. When she came to you, you didn't... She stopped. You just believed her. She came through those doors alone, he said, and she ran straight to me. A 5-year-old does not do that unless she has decided you are someone who will help. He paused. I was not going to prove her wrong. Nadia pressed her lips together. Something in her, the armor, the professional distance, the 8 years of managing everything alone and calling it composure, moved in the specific way of something that has been held in place for a long time by effort, and has felt that effort, suddenly and completely, release. She did not cry. She was Nadia Osei, but her eyes did something, and Caleb, who was very good at seeing exactly what was in front of him, saw it. I would like to ask you something, he said, and I am aware of how this will sound given that I stopped my wedding approximately 20 minutes ago. Ask, she said. I have a company picnic in 2 weeks, he said. 400 employees. Golden Gate Park. I would like to have it catered by someone I can trust with the details. He paused. Specifically, I would like to hire you as the event coordinator, not as a vendor, as a contractor with full creative authority over the event. Nadia looked at him. That is a business proposition, she said. It is, he said. It is also, he said, an excuse to see you again in a context that is not a service corridor, on a day when everything is complicated. A pause. I am aware that is not a normal thing to say. I am trying the honest approach. Nadia looked at him for a long moment. She looked at Zara. Zara was looking between them, with the expression of a child who has assessed a situation and arrived at a position and is waiting for the adults to catch up. What do you think? Nadia asked her. Zara looked at Caleb with her full assessing gaze. He believed me, she said simply. When I told him. Yes, Nadia said. That is important, Zara said. It is, Nadia agreed. Zara looked at Caleb one more time. Okay, she said, with the finality of someone whose due diligence is complete. Nadia looked at Caleb. Send me the details, she said. I will look at my calendar. Something shifted on his face. Not a performance, just a man who has asked something honest and received something honest in return, and understands the difference between that and everything else he has been doing for the last 18 months. I will, he said. He looked at Zara. Thank you, he said, for coming to find me. Zara looked at him with those enormous, focused eyes. You were the right person, she said simply. I could tell. How? He said. Zara thought about this with appropriate seriousness. You have a face, she said, that looks like it keeps its promises. Caleb looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at Nadia. She gets that from you, he said. She gets it from herself, Nadia said. Right here. A 5-year-old just said the most important thing in this entire story. You have a face that looks like it keeps its promises. Share this right now with someone who has that kind of face in their life. One tap. They need to know you see it. Subscribe because the ending of this story is everything. Let's finish it. The company picnic happened on a Saturday in early November. 400 Foster Energy Solutions employees and their families in Golden Gate Park, with the bay visible on one side and the eucalyptus trees on the other, and the specific San Francisco November light that turns everything it touches briefly golden before the fog comes back. Nadia had coordinated every detail. She had done it with the precision and care and complete professional authority that she brought to every event she touched. And also, for the first time in 8 years, with the particular additional energy of someone working on something that felt like it belonged to her rather than something she was managing on behalf of someone else. Caleb had stayed out of the details entirely. He had said he trusted her. He had meant it. She had believed him. That was new. Zara had come. She had moved through the picnic with the focused purposefulness of a child who considers a new environment a research project, talking to the engineers, asking questions about the wind turbines in the photographs on the display boards, explaining to anyone who would listen that her mother had organized everything and that the bread rolls were excellent. Caleb had found them near the display boards in the early afternoon. He had crouched down beside Zara. "What do you think of the wind turbines?" he asked. "They are very tall," Zara said. "How do they work?" He had explained it to her. Simply, completely, with the patience of someone who believes that a 5-year-old asking how something works deserves a real answer. Zara had listened with the focused intensity of someone taking notes. "So the wind makes the electricity," she said. "Essentially, yes. And you store it." "We're working on storing it better," he said. "That's the hard part." Zara considered this. "My mama is good at organizing things," she said. "Maybe she could help." He looked at Nadia. Nadia looked at him. "Different kind of organizing," Nadia said. "Maybe not so different," Caleb said. And the three of them stood in Golden Gate Park in the November light, with the bay visible behind them, and the eucalyptus moving in the bay wind, and 400 people around them who had built something real together, and something that had begun in a service corridor with a push and a 5-year-old climbing a flight of stairs alone became, in the particular alchemy of honesty and time, and a child who paid very close attention to everything, something that felt very much like the beginning of what everything had been building toward. There are moments that cost less than a minute. The decision to walk back down that aisle, the moment of turning away from the altar, the 3 seconds it took to look at a 5-year-old girl's face and decide that what she was telling him was true and that the truth required action. Less than a minute, all of it. But a 5-year-old girl had climbed a flight of stairs alone to make it possible. Not because she understood what she was doing, not because she had a strategy or a plan, or any awareness of the 400 people in the ballroom above her, or what it would mean to interrupt a wedding, or what happened when billionaires stopped their own ceremonies in front of their entire social and professional worlds. She had climbed the stairs because her mother was on the floor, because someone had hurt her mother, because she had been told that an emergency was something that could not wait. And she had decided, with the absolute moral clarity of a 5-year-old who pays very close attention to everything, that this was that. She had been right. She had found the right person. She had known because his face looked like it kept its promises. And it did. If today's story moved you, please hit that like button right now. 1 second. It costs you nothing, and it sends this to someone who needs it today. Subscribe, because there are more stories coming. More women like Nadia, more children like Zara, more moments where a small person does the thing that every adult in the room has decided is not their job. Share this today with someone who needs to be reminded that the truth always finds its way out, even when it has to climb a flight of stairs alone to do it. And I will see you in the next one.